Ladies and gentlemen, this is the newborn monument, the center, the heart, one of the biggest attractions of Pristina here in Kosovo. And today I'm going to be giving you guys a guide about this city here in Kosovo. Before we do anything, make sure that you subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single video, because we've got tons of awesome guides around the world coming to you on this YouTube channel. Before we do anything else, let's roll the intro.
Pristina, Kosovo. Welcome to a city that surprised me beyond belief. This is a city nestled in the country of Kosovo, in one of Europe's most fascinating regions, the Balkan region of Eastern Europe. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Kosovo, and Pristina more specifically, has a lot of history. A lot of it is very fresh, and a lot of it is very political. I don't want to get into that in this video. I just want to give you guys some of the awesome sights and talk to you guys about some of the experiences that I had in the city. One thing that I want to mention is if you can, make it a priority to try to couch surf when you're in this city. I think one of the best ways to learn about Kosovo is to experience it from the locals. I think due to the nature of this country's history, it's really important to hear out what the locals have to say and listen to their stories and obviously the history of what they went through. I can't get into too fine details in this video because YouTube will surely demonetize the video, but I will, in certain parts of this video, give you glimpses at some of the more fresh history that exists around the city. But let's start with some fun stuff.
Alright, my friends, welcome to Pristina, Kosovo. This is the main square slash street called Shesh. If you go all the way down here, you're gonna end up in a square. This is our main starting point. We are looking at a little tour of the city today, couch surfing, meeting some locals, experiencing the food and stuff, but we're gonna start the video off right here in this little square.
In Shesh Square, you can just walk around, get some street food, see the sights. There's different monuments and different statues around explaining some of the history of the city, as well as lots of shops. It's in essence a high street of the city and a very good place to go if you want to maybe either meet some locals or hang out and see how a lot of locals live their lives day to day. Our couchsurfing host led us to an awesome restaurant here where we were able to try some local food, but also some like artisan food from different countries like classic french fries, burgers, and ravioli. Also, no better way to start your day after some food and a walk on the high street than getting some coffee. This is a very famous pastime for a lot of the young adults of the city, gathering up around some of the local coffee shops with a really cool hip scene. Also, sometimes tucked away in some of the cool side streets, you'll meet a lot of young Kosovars here, and this is probably one of the cool areas to meet locals. Alright, here's a little fun fact for you about Kosovo, especially if you're an American. Traveling as an American in Kosovo is one of the cooler aspects. Kosovo loves the United States of America, or at least historically it does. And there's lots of signs of appreciation to the United States around the city. I think I've actually seen more US flags around Pristina than I have in my own hometown of Miami. Because of the great relationship between the United States and Kosovo in the history, you'll see lots of signs of appreciation of the United States around Pristina. And that will lead you to Bill Clinton Street.
Alright, my friends, we have made it to the site. This is Bill Clinton Boulevard. They love Bill Clinton over here because of the historical things that happened that I can't get into in this video. This is a statue to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton has his own boulevard, which is this boulevard, which has a lot of shopping, commerce, restaurants, a lot of things going on. And there's this giant American flag just draping down with the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton here. All right, my friends, and right next to the monument, there's actually a store called Hillary, which has a picture of Hillary Clinton on the side, but it's basically a store that just sells pantsuits, which is incredible. That there's a store dedicated to Hillary Clinton that just sells pantsuits right next to the Bill Clinton. This is the best thing I've ever seen. It's pretty ridiculous. I love you, Kosovo. It's amazing.
All right, let's talk about the monuments. Pristina is big on monuments, and we can't go past the one where we started this adventure on, the Newborn Monument. The Newborn Monument is obviously a very significant and important monument to a lot of the Kosovars living in Pristina. It was unveiled on the day that Kosovo declared independence from Serbia. And since then, every year it is painted a different color. This year we actually got this really cool vibrant color. It represents the birth of Kosovo and the hope for a new future for the people who live in the city. Now, while the Newborn Monument is a really positive outlook in the city, there are some darker monuments with a more bleak past to them, and one of them is the Heroinat Monument. Now, while I can't give the exact explanation for why this monument exists, it is there to honor the Albanian women who suffered horrible crimes against humanity during the Kosovo War. I highly recommend you do some Googling just to research a little bit why exactly it's there and read the history of it, but the representation is of an Albanian woman, which is the majority of people who live in Kosovo, made up of 20,000 pins. And 20,000 is a significant number because it's approximately the amount of women that suffered horrible crimes during the Kosovo War. This monument is placed just across the street from the newborn monument, so it's a really easy walk to it. And of course, on the high street, you'll be able to find the monument to Skanderbeg, who is an Albanian nobleman who led a rebellion against the Ottoman Empire, aka an absolute badass. I definitely recommend reading a little bit history about him. As well as the monument to Ibrahim Rugova, which was one of the early presidents of Kosovo. Another cool monument that I actually really liked is the giant Lego block that exists in the middle of the square. It is there to represent the missing piece from the European Union, which is Kosovo. It's more of a statement towards the EU. Again, not trying to get political, but I like the message behind it. It's pretty cool that they put up a giant Lego block in the middle of their city to make a statement. And of course, if we're talking about monuments, we can't skip the National Library of Kosovo. Regarded to as one of the strangest looking buildings on planet Earth, this building is amazing. And it's basically the reason that I came to Kosovo in the first place. I remember seeing an article of one of the most unique buildings ever designed in Europe by Peter Bogdani, which was the National Library of Kosovo in Pristina. This place and the entire complex around it is very, very interesting. The goal of this library is basically to collect, preserve, and promote and make accessible all of the intellectual heritage of Kosovo. And when you go in there, it does exactly that. There are tons of history books, old artifacts, and amazing sculptures inside and outside. I really, really recommend going inside of this place when you come to Kosovo. Take a walk around. It's super quiet and you can just focus on the artifacts around you. Now let's talk about the design real quick because it is interesting. Yeah, all those domes that you see on top of the building, they're actually windows, and that's something I didn't realize until I actually entered the building and saw it. When you come in, it casts a really interesting light throughout the entire building with this circular sort of design. It's got a bunch of rooms, it's got some lecture halls, and it's got an amazing main hall with this beautiful marble floor. I definitely agree that it's one of the stranger buildings that I've ever seen in my life, but I have a sweet spot for it in my heart because it is the reason I ended up in the wonderful country of Kosovo in the first place, and I wouldn't have been able to enjoy my time in Pristina if I didn't see this thing on a random article on the internet a few years back. So to the National Library of Kosovo, I love you very dearly. Now, right across the complex from the National Library of Kosovo is the Serbian Orthodox Church. Now again, really not trying to get political with this, but I do want to give some context about it because it's actually really interesting. So, Serbians and Kosovars don't necessarily get along well. In Kosovo, the majority of the population is ethnically Albanian and the minority is Serbian. This church is called the Cathedral Church of Christ the Savior, and for a lot of Kosovars, this is unfortunately a sight for sore eyes in their city. It's basically an unfinished Serbian Orthodox church, which has now become a statement. For a lot of people, it's basically just taking up space and is sort of a bit of a land grab from Serbians in Kosovo. From what I've understood, the land is also semi-controlled by Serbia, so they can't really take it down or do anything with it. I was even warned to go as far as to not try to enter the premises about it. There have been a lot of controversies surrounding this church. I do recommend you to look into it a little bit more and read online before visiting so you can understand the full scope and gravity of the situation. Next up is the Palace of Youth and Sports, which is located in the center of the city. It's got a really, really interesting design, but unfortunately a few years ago it suffered some major fires on the inside. For us, it was a really cool place to go explore and see what a sort of semi-partially abandoned but also destroyed building looks like in the center of a city. There's actually a few malls that run pretty close and underneath this building, and this is right next to the newborn monument as well. So it's smack dab in the center of the city and it's lined with a lot of flags. I highly recommend checking this place out as well just because of the intricate design from the outside. It's super imposing looking and it's really, really interesting. Next up is the Meeting of Styles Kosovo, or MOS Kosovo. This is an abandoned railway station that has been turned into an amazing, absolutely incredible art stadium. Stadium would be an understatement for what this thing is. It's a complex that you can walk through, an old train station, and basically see an incredible amount of art on the walls. Now this thing is constantly changing and they're always adding new art styles, and artists from all over the world have come and done designs here. When we were there, the design was sort of following a theme of like neon 80s lights, and it was incredible. The way that they made the art look so alive and actually bright, like there were actual lights there, was something I've never seen before. So I highly recommend checking it out. You can also follow them on Instagram and see what they're currently doing. The art installations are always changing, and they're even doing things right now during the pandemic. Overall, Pristina was one of my favorite spots I visited in Eastern Europe, but most importantly, the Balkans. I got to visit a bunch of countries when I was there, but Kosovo definitely was the one that stayed in my heart the most. Between the rich history, the friendly locals, and the fact that Americans are welcomed here like no other country on planet Earth, I actually felt strangely at home in Kosovo. I can't wait to hopefully come back one day and explore some of the other cities in the country, but as well, I would love to see how Pristina develops in the future. Wars have plagued this region for many, many years prior to this most recent decade, and even as recent as back as 10 years ago, there was still very dangerous situations happening on the streets of Pristina. Nowadays, you can enjoy the comforts of a very safe, welcoming, and hospitable country and an incredible city to explore if it's your first time in the Balkan region. I really, really recommend you try to get in touch with as many locals as you can while you're there, and I promise you, just make the effort to speak to some on the street or try to meet some online before going, and I promise you they will be some of the friendliest individuals you've met abroad.